On September 1st, 2019, over the low-lying shores of Grand Bahama Island, the skies turned the color of bruised iron, and the ocean literally rose up to swallow the land. A Category 5 hurricane had just slammed directly into the island with a fury rarely documented in human history. But what began to happen over the next 41 hours was something that atmospheric scientists previously considered practically impossible. Entire residential neighborhoods and fleets of automobiles were completely submerged under seawater. Desperate voices filled the airwaves as residents pleaded into their phones for divine intervention, praying for infants only 4 months old while neighbors watched helplessly as their friends were torn away by rushing currents. The storm unleashed sustained winds of 185 miles per hour, tying the all-time record for the strongest Atlantic landfall ever recorded. And then, at the exact moment when a hurricane is supposed to push forward across the open water, it stopped. It did not merely slow down, nor did it begin to weaken. It simply stood still. The deafening roar of the atmospheric wall vibrated through the foundation of every structure. Electrical grids shattered, plunging tens of thousands into pitch darkness. For 41 agonizing hours, the most catastrophic storm ever recorded in the region parked itself directly above a single isolated island populated by 50,000 human beings. At times, the National Hurricane Center in Miami officially logged its forward velocity at 0 miles per hour. Unmoving, immovable, and relentless, a monster Category 5 tempest remained stationary over a residential coastline like a loaded weapon aimed continuously at the exact same target for nearly 2 full days. Homes were dissolved, power lines were shredded, and complete communities were wiped off the map. Yet what most people across the globe never fully grasped about Hurricane Dorian was that raw wind velocity alone was not what made it the deadliest meteorological event in modern Bahamian history. What made it unprecedentedly lethal was its terrifying refusal to leave. By the time the inhabitants realized the monster was stuck in place, escape was no longer an option. This is the incredible, harrowing story of the hurricane that refused to move, and the vibrant island community it nearly erased from existence. To fully comprehend the sheer scale of the tragedy that unfolded on September 1st, 2019, one must first look at the Bahamas through the eyes of those who call these low-lying islands home. The archipelago consists of more than 700 individual islands and cays, scattered across roughly 100,000 to 180,000 square miles of the western Atlantic Ocean, sitting just 50 miles off the tropical coast of Florida. To the wider world, these islands represent an idyllic paradise, framed by crystal turquoise waters, pristine white sands, and sun-drenched resorts that travelers save up for decades to experience. But behind this beautiful postcard facade lies a nation of just over 400,000 people whose entire economy relies heavily upon fragile tourism and commercial fishing. These isolated populations are scattered across distances so vast that many small towns can only be reached by small motorboats or light aircraft. At the northernmost edge of this sprawling island chain sit Grand Bahama and Great Abaco. Together, these two islands were home to approximately 76,000 residents. Grand Bahama hosts Freeport, the second largest industrial and commercial city in the country, while Great Abaco is dotted with historic fishing villages like Marsh Harbor, Hopetown, Treasure Cay, and dense informal settlements inhabited by generations of Haitian migrants who work in construction and agriculture. These islanders were no strangers to severe weather. The Bahamas sit directly in the heart of the Atlantic Hurricane Corridor, a natural highway traversed by powerful tropical systems since time immemorial. The people knew how to read the clouds, how to board up their homes, and how to weather a Category 4 storm with quiet resilience. But Grand Bahama had never once been struck by a Category 5 hurricane in recorded history. No meteorologist, no government minister, and no local elder could truly foresee what was coming, because tropical cyclones are simply not supposed to behave the way Dorian did. The storm began its life quietly on August 24th, 2019, as a weak atmospheric wave moving off the western coast of Africa. For several days, it remained entirely unremarkable, slowly gathering heat and moisture as it drifted west. By August 28th, it passed between Puerto Rico and the United States Virgin Islands as a modest Category 1 hurricane, causing relatively minor damage before drifting out into the open Atlantic. At that moment, standard computer models suggested the storm would swing north toward the southeastern coast of the United States. But on August 30th, as Dorian glided over the deep open waters between Puerto Rico and the northern Bahamas, it crossed into an environment that meteorologists can only describe as explosive atmospheric fuel. The ocean surface temperatures directly beneath the storm were exceptionally elevated, hovering well above 30 degrees Celsius, with no cool underlying water layer to dampen its thermal power. Simultaneously, wind shear in the upper atmosphere dropped to almost zero, removing any mechanical resistance that might disrupt the cyclone's powerful vortex. With infinite oceanic fuel below and zero structural friction above, Hurricane Dorian detonated. Satellite watchers watched in disbelief as the storm underwent an extraordinary process of rapid intensification. In a span of just 36 hours, Dorian escalated from a modest Category 2 storm into a world-shattering Category 5 Titan. Sustained winds climbed to an extraordinary 185 miles per hour, while central atmospheric pressure plunged to 910 millibars, solidifying its place among the most powerful Atlantic storms ever recorded. The National Hurricane Center began issuing frantically worded bulletins, urging immediate action. The Bahamian government declared mandatory evacuation orders for vulnerable regions across Great Abaco and Grand Bahama. Prime Minister Hubert Minnis addressed the country on national television, pleading with residents to set aside pride and flee toward emergency shelters, warning sternly that anyone who attempted to ride out a storm of this magnitude was facing mortal peril. Tens of thousands obeyed the warnings and fled toward higher ground or sturdier concrete structures. However, for many living in low-lying informal settlements, such as the sprawling Haitian neighborhood known as the Mud near Marsh Harbor, leaving was simply not a real option. Poverty, lack of private transportation, and fear of legal exposure left hundreds trapped in fragile wooden homes. They boarded up their windows with scrap plywood, pulled their families into interior rooms, and waited in silence as the sky turned pitch black. What was advancing toward them was not merely a devastating storm, but an atmospheric anomaly without modern precedent. High above the Atlantic, the global steering currents that normally drag hurricanes along their westward trajectories suddenly dissolved. A massive high-pressure system sitting over Bermuda formed a rigid atmospheric wall to the north, while another competing system to the south pulled in the opposite direction. Trapped between these opposing forces, the engine driving Hurricane Dorian forward ground to a complete halt. Atmospheric scientists noted that never before in recorded history had a Category 5 superstorm stalled completely in place for such a prolonged period. At 12:40 in the afternoon on Sunday, September 1st, 2019, the terrifying eye wall of Hurricane Dorian made direct landfall on Elbow Cay in the Abacos. Sustained wind speeds were measured at 185 miles per hour, with violent gusts exceeding 220 miles per hour. The ocean was pushed violently ashore in a towering storm surge, reaching 23 feet above normal sea level. The destruction on Great Abaco was instantaneous and absolute. High-velocity winds sheared steel roofs clean off buildings and pulverized wooden framed homes down to their concrete floor pads. Minutes later, the towering ocean surge rolled inland to sweep away whatever debris remained. In Marsh Harbor, 90% of the municipal infrastructure was destroyed within hours. High-density settlements like the Mud were not merely damaged, they were literally erased from the surface of the earth, leaving behind nothing but flooded rubble and exposed slab foundations. Up to this point, the catastrophe, while monstrous, still adhered to known historical patterns. But as the core of the storm crawled westward onto the eastern tip of Grand Bahama, The unthinkable happened. Satellite telemetry and reconnaissance aircraft confirmed that Dorian's forward movement had dropped to 1 mile per hour, then to half a mile per hour, and finally to complete stillness. The National Hurricane Center officially classified the monster as stationary. The eye of a Category 5 superstorm sat immovable over Grand Bahama and refused to budge for 41 consecutive hours. Imagine 2 full days locked beneath the absolute apex of a catastrophic tempest. Structures that survived the initial onslaught were subjected to dozens of additional hours of pounding rain and continuous wind. The ocean storm surge that flooded the island did not retreat. It was locked against the shoreline by unrelenting onshore gales that refused to shift direction. Meanwhile, relentless rain bands dumped an estimated 35 inches of water over Grand Bahama in a 48-hour window, piling 5 feet of fresh rainfall on top of the already flooded ocean tide. Buildings were disassembled systematically, board by board and brick by brick, by an unyielding mechanical force that refused to end. Deep inside Marsh Harbor, a 15-year-old boy named Benson Etienne was sheltering inside a 2-story building alongside 8 family members when the storm peaked. The upper roof was stripped away in an instant, exposing the family directly to screaming wind gusts and freezing rain. Soon after, the exterior walls collapsed, forcing the entire family to leap into the rising floodwaters. They were forced to swim for their lives through a toxic torrent contaminated with raw sewage, spilled marine fuel, and submerged heavy debris. Though all 8 members of the Etienne family miraculously survived, many of their immediate neighbors were swept away into the dark ocean currents. Elsewhere, a 37-year-old man named Winston Youth was sheltering inside a friend's concrete home with 5 other adults. As the eye wall ground over their position, the house shattered around them. Winston was hurled into the outdoor tempest, where he managed to wrap his arms around a stout hardwood tree. For hours, he clung to the trunk while flying debris tore at his body and freezing seawater rose up to his chest. During the struggle, the icy water numbed his extremities so severely that he did not even feel one of his fingers being severed by debris. When the waters finally receded, only 2 of the 6 people who had sheltered in that house were still alive. On Grand Bahama, a mother named June Russell recounted harrowing scenes of parents losing their grip on young children as raging floodwaters pulled families apart in the pitch dark. In the flattened neighborhood of the Mud, the devastation reached catastrophic proportions. Because many residents were undocumented migrants living in informal timber homes, exact headcounts were nearly impossible to maintain. When the storm finally cleared, hundreds of human beings simply could not be found anywhere. Search crews, military teams, and international recovery dogs spent weeks sifting through mountains of soaked debris. But hundreds of victims were carried directly out into the ocean by the receding storm surge. Official records logged 74 confirmed deaths, but state health officials openly acknowledged that the true human toll exceeded 600 lives. For the inhabitants of the islands, the official numbers felt completely disconnected from the reality of the missing names and empty homes. It was not until the early morning hours of September 3rd that the atmospheric block finally dissolved, allowing upper-level steering winds to push Dorian northward. The cyclone slowly accelerated to 2 miles per hour, then 5, and eventually 10. Leaving the devastated Bahamian archipelago behind. The storm later brushed the eastern coastline of the United States before making a brief final landfall as a Category 1 hurricane in North Carolina. But the mark it left upon the Bahamas was permanent. On Great Abaco, 75% of all structures were left in total ruins. Essential power grids were completely demolished. Freshwater aquifers were contaminated with saltwater for years, and total economic damages were estimated at $3.4 billion, representing roughly 25% of the entire nation's gross domestic product, lost in 41 hours. In the years following this tragedy, scientific institutions including NASA and NOAA analyzed the event to understand why Dorian stalled so dramatically. Recent studies indicate that the average forward translation speed of North Atlantic hurricanes has slowed down by approximately 17% between 1944 and 2017. As global climate patterns shift, atmospheric steering currents appear to weaken more frequently, raising the terrifying prospect that stationary superstorms may become a recurring reality rather than an isolated anomaly. The story of Hurricane Dorian is not merely a record of powerful winds or high tides. It is a sobering reminder of what happens when the natural world breaks its established rules. Marsh Harbor and Grand Bahama were not destroyed because the storm was simply strong. They were devastated because the storm was patient enough to wait. As communities continue the long, painful work of rebuilding, the memory of those 41 hours remains, etched into the history of the Atlantic. These historical accounts are shared to preserve the memory of those who lived through unprecedented natural disasters and to help us better understand our changing planet. If you believe these human stories deserve to be remembered and understood, taking a second to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, or subscribe to the channel makes an immense difference in helping us produce detailed historical documentaries. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and we will see you in the next story.